Well, welcome back to another video. This morning we are in the adventure Jeep, headed down to Covington, Kentucky to try to capture another picture of the Roebling Bridge, along with maybe the Cincinnati skyline here as the sun's coming up. This morning we're going to use my Leica Q. Last time we did this, we used the 0-1 Mark II. Figured this morning get up and try the Leica. I haven't used it too much lately. Want to see what it can do in this kind of environment, so we're heading out to do that. So a little bit of a drive, so everybody stay tuned, sit back, relax, and we'll see you when we get there. Well, we made it down here to the river, and on the bridge, here it is, you can see over there. But like everything, nothing's easy. Normally I would park here or on the other side of the bridge, but for whatever reason this morning you can't because everything's blocked off. So I parked back up the street here, went into it and tried to pay to park in that spot in the app, and it says item area not available. So, but it's not marked as not being available for parking, so I'm not really sure what the hell's going on there, but I guess it is what it is. I'll walk up the street here and see if I can find a place to take an image. Alright, so we found a spot down here by the bridge, opposite side this time here, okay, as opposed to last time we were here. Alright, now one of the things, now here's the back of my camera if you can see it. Alright, we're shooting at f11. And as you can tell from that 8-second, shutter speed, so we're definitely here really before there's much light. The sun back out over here, it'll come up in time, but I didn't even look at my watch yet to see what time it is, but we will certainly do everything we can to capture a couple images. Now if you look over here, I don't know if you can see it or not, you'll see these pilings or whatever you want to call them coming up out of the river. Obviously those are docks, or were used as docks, all right, back in the day, all right, for riverboats. Well, what I remember about 35 years ago or so was this used to be the location for a restaurant called La Boom. All right, La Boom was a restaurant that was Boomer Esiason and Pete Rose. It was right here on the waterfront. I think it was in this spot. Certainly it's no longer here, but my wife and I had dinner here back in the late 80s, early 90s. We were here in town, or I was in town for a trade show, at the convention center across the river, over there on the other side. All right, and I got invited to dinner, and my wife happened to be in town, so we went to dinner with a gentleman by the name of Alan Gray, who worked for a company by the name of Pfeiffer Wire. And Pfeiffer produced screen material, all right, for window screens and things like that. And back at that time I worked for a company called Great Lakes Window, all right, and we were here for a show, and it was was a great opportunity to come over and, you know, enjoy. It was really interesting. You know, Alan who worked for Pfeiffer, he also played football at the University of Alabama, and Pfeiffer, if I remember correctly, is down in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And he played for Bear Bryant, and he was on national championship teams, you know, a national championship team. So we were, you know, it was great to be able to have those, you know, conversations at dinner. But what was even more interesting was sitting at the table next to us was Joe Theismann. You know, he was in town for the show. He actually was a guest of, you know, the parent company that I work for. All right, and he was at the table next to us, and the two knew each other. So there was definitely some, you know, jawing going back and forth about Notre Dame versus, you know, Alabama. It was quite an interesting evening. So I can still remember that like it was yesterday, and I'm pretty sure it was right here. Now the other thing is there's some hotels here. You can kind of see the Embassy Suites, and then next to it is the Marriott. Well, that Marriott, stayed at that several times with my kids when they were playing soccer and they were in tournaments here, either in northern Kentucky or over in Cincinnati. A lot of times we stayed at that Marriott. So we got the opportunity, you know, to stay there and, you know, be real close to all this stuff, which is pretty interesting. I know my wife and I have stayed in that hotel and walked across the Roebling Bridge and gone over to a Reds game many years ago as well. You know, so it's quite interesting when you look at it, you know, different things, and, you know, how you use things or see things in your life, even when you don't even live in this area. You know, at least at the times that the stories I'm giving there, we didn't, you know, it's, this place has had a, you know, profound impact, I guess, on my life when you look at it and you go back through the years. You know, you don't really think about it until you're standing here trying to capture it as an image. You know, quite interesting. I think what I'll do, you know, of course you can see for whatever reason, the Leica Q, when you don't press the shutter, it wants to move away from being in focus. I don't quite understand that, but it doesn't really matter as it's in focus. You know, and we're shooting at f/16. I wanted to try to capture it a little differently, so we'll see what it looks like here. You know, when you look at the back of the, all right, the Leica Q, if you want to review an image, the button's here, okay? So you have to press it and it'll bring it up. So that's the last image we took, all right? So I'm gonna take a couple more, maybe take a pano here, the whole city, you know, and make my way back over to my Jeep. You know, I don't want to get a ticket for parking, you know, in a legal spot, even though it wasn't marked as being illegal, you know, and then we'll finish up the video there. Any images I capture that are good, we'll throw in here, all right, so you can see them. All right, so we made it back to the Jeep. You know, got my coffee. Hopefully we captured some good images. Hopefully you got a chance to see them there. Now, certainly just before sunrise, I didn't even wait around for the sun to come up. I didn't want to end up getting a parking ticket for being where I'm sitting, even though I'm not quite sure that I'm doing anything wrong. So, you know, but I will say this, I do enjoy having the, you know, the setup here in the Jeep so I can use it for video. It's kind of nice, you know, just a little mount here on the dash, all right, and I can, you know, I got a light on top of the GoPro, and I can, you know, sit here and adjust it. I can turn it around, I can have it face me, and I can sit here and talk. That's kind of nice. You know, it's good to have. You know, nice thing is Jeeps are set up for this, and there's products made so you can just, you know, put it on and use it. All right, so now what I want to talk about. You know, in the last video we talked a little bit about, you know, the new 50 to 200 2.8. What I've been seeing here lately out on the internet is a lot of people saying that the new lens is going to, you know, have a huge impact on the 40 to 150 2.8. People are going to sell it, trade it into whatever, to trade up to, you know, to a $3,600, $3,700 lens. In my mind, I see that as being, and now I don't see that happening, but I'm finding evidence when I look at stuff out on a lot of the different forums and things where people are saying that's exactly what they're going to do, which I find that really odd. But, you know, granted, it's going to be a great lens. That's not a question. But it's a lot of money, you know, and you've already got, you know, the 40 to 150, and you've already got TCs. You really aren't gaining a lot. Now, you're gaining something. Let's not kid ourselves, but you're not gaining a lot. So I'm really curious about my viewers. You know, are you considering doing that? You know, getting rid of your 40 to 150 and getting a 50 to 200? Really, I'd love to know if you're thinking of doing it, or if you are doing it, or if you have done it. You know, or are you getting rid of any of your other lenses to be able to pick that up? Now, I'm not going to kid anybody. I thought about getting rid of my 300 f4 and my 40 to 150 when I first heard about this lens, you know, along with even maybe my 8 to 18, you know, trade all them in to minimize the impact of buying, you know, a new 50 to 200. But I just don't want to do that. I've got good lenses. The lenses I have are fantastic. Why would I, you know, want to spend more money and get rid of them? So at this point, I'm not planning on doing anything. Now, that doesn't mean down the road I won't. All right. But today I'm going to stay pat with what I have, you know, because again, times are tough. Let's not kid anybody. All right. I mean, you know, $3,700, $3,600 for a brand new lens. Even if you trade some stuff or sell some stuff, you're still going to have a significant amount of money, and you've already got stuff that kind of cover that. All right. So right now, given the environment and the economic environment that's out there and all the craziness that's going on in this world, I don't know. I'm not going to do it. All right. And you can do what you want, but it's your money. But I'm not doing it. I'm going to stay pat with what I have here for a while, and, you know, see how things go. And again, keep in mind, I'm retiring here next year, and I, you know, certainly, you know, want to minimize, you know, my expenses going into that. I'd much rather spend my, you know, my time and my money in retirement on adventure as opposed to lenses and equipment. I've got good stuff, you know, just like this morning. I'm down there using my Leica Q's 10 years old. Okay, so it's 10 years old. But it's a camera that works. It doesn't have a ton of, you know, shutter clicks on it, and it does a pretty damn good job, you know. And I've got 2 all-in-1 Mark IIs, and I've got good lenses. I've got good tripods. I've got a GoPro. I've got a DJI Pocket 2, which, by the way, am I getting the Pocket 3? No. I mean, it's, you know, twice as much money, and isn't that much better. I'm going to use what I have, you know, and see what I can do to capture, you know, what I'm looking for here as we move into the next year. So, you know, again, leave comments down below, you know, what you think, where you're going, what you're heading, how do you feel about some of this stuff. I'd really like to know how my viewers feel about it, you know. So again, you know, I'm staying pat with what I've got. I'm not buying any new tripods. I'm not buying any new backpacks or bags. You know, I've got stuff that, quite frankly, I'm proud of. I like the stuff I have. I've been able to build up a decent collection here over the last few years of good equipment, and I don't really feel like I need anything. All right. So from that standpoint, given today's environment, I'm staying pat with where I am. All right. So let me know what you think, where you're at, what you're doing. Would appreciate that. Again, any other comments, don't be afraid to put them in there. Again, if you just want to try to help out the channel, you know, C4YT in the comment section, comment for YouTube. That can help. It'll just help the algorithm put the video out more, and you don't really have to do a lot. That would be, you know, greatly appreciated if you could do that. You know, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. You know, share the videos if you want to help grow the audience. All right, would greatly appreciate that as well. All right, so I'm gonna stop rambling. All right, so here we go. All right, I'm gonna drive home, drink my coffee, you know, have breakfast with my wife, and try to enjoy the day. So thanks for coming along, everybody. Till we see you again, stay safe.